Everywhere you go, you'll come across someone claiming how good EVs are. It is either that or someone saying it's just a scam. But if we're being honest, nobody knows the truth more than the CEO of the companies that makes them. So it was shocking when Carlos Tavares, the head of Stellantis, one of the biggest companies in the industry, which includes Ram, Dodge and Chrysler, came out and said what everybody was thinking. And he didn't even hesitate a little bit. He's blatantly claiming that EVs are not the solution, despite investing over $35.5 billion in plug-in models through 2025. They're even partnering with Samsung for their first EV battery factory. But this is because for so many reasons. We all know the first one. It's not a secret, and he said similar things many times. This is the weaponization of climate change policies. But there is more to it, and it's very clear if you think about it. Currently, there are more than 1.3 billion internal combustion engine-powered cars on the road, and Tavares warns that by trying to replace them all with EVs, we could actually be releasing more greenhouse gases. And even if we somehow all got together from all over the world and just agreed to do so, which is just absurd to even think about, it still would not be easy. But somehow, if all the policies work and we replace every car with an EV, then that would mean changing the world forever. This is not a simple thing, and if you think this does not concern you, think again. Almost everything we have and do is somehow related to oil and gas, one way or another, because everything needs some sort of power to be transported and shipped over. But most of all, for most of us, these changes mean that soon we won't be able to afford any type of car, because one other shocking thing that Tavares revealed is that the production cost of EVs is 40% more than a traditional combustion engine car, and we're the ones who will face the consequences. Most of the middle class, most of us simply can't afford to buy an EV. But this is how things work, right? As more companies try to compete in this segment, the prices will go down. But not for EVs, at least not from what we've seen in recent years. There is a huge assumption that the world has enough raw materials to just fund whatever we want, but we're currently seeing this backfiring on us. And don't take our word for it. The CEOs of the biggest EV manufacturers, Tesla and Rivian, have been talking about the dire truth of how scarce materials like lithium, nickel, graphite and cobalt are, and we can't make any type of electric vehicle without them. We simply don't know if we have enough lithium and other materials just lying around for the whole world to transition into an all-EV world. And again, let's make another assumption. Let's say there are enough of the things that we desperately need. Even then, it's almost impossible to ramp up the extraction process as quickly as policymakers are expecting. It takes more than a decade to build a single lithium mine. This is why Tavares was saying we would actually be releasing more emissions by trying to get rid of all the car emissions at once. We need to work on the logistics side of it, and he's not alone. The CEO of Mercedes-Benz has said that the price of EVs will go up unless we increase the effectiveness and production of a better supply chain. It already costs 40% more than a traditional car, and if the EU and US continue down this route, EVs will be one of the most expensive and sought-after commodities in the market, which will make them even more expensive. So, what now? Actually, the same person seems to have figured it out. Tavares believes there is a simple way we can achieve zero emissions, and that is by going slow. He suggests that if we make each new vehicle have around 30 to 50 miles of zero-emission range, we would astronomically reduce our impact, because almost 90% of the time we use our cars to travel under 30 miles. And even though this is not an easy task, it is doable, and the result would be very effective. But one more thing we've been asking ourselves through our research for this video is why Tavares is so concerned with this topic. Of course he should be. He's leading 15 giant companies, and this directly concerns him. But so do other companies, right? And there have been many other CEOs like him. But what makes him so different is that he's talking about so many details we have no information on. And the reason is because he actually made the mistake once, and now, with the way things are going on the market, every other company, including Stellantis themselves, will inevitably do it again. We'll explain what happened to them, but in order to fully understand that, you need to know about one more thing: the current reality. The big picture of all this goes beyond reducing emissions. It is complicated, and everything is connected and shrouded in details that are not easily seen from the outside. All the powerful countries are very concerned with this topic, and they should be right, because the future is going that way. But they are the main actors driving the future of the world down that road, and this just makes a never-ending loop. To Tavares, this is a sign of a trade war. He expressed this by saying, "Are we setting up a global trade war under the guise of combating climate change?" But the reality is, we are way too far from being fully independent from gas-guzzling cars, and they know it better than us, or at least the CEOs do. Tavares thinks the way we're making EVs is simply unsustainable. They are expensive, and in order to make them last longer or achieve the ideal range of 400 miles, EVs need around 1,000 pounds of weight compared to its combustion engine cars. And who will pay for the added materials and the cost? You guessed it, it's us. If you think 40% is too much, the truth is even worse, because now there's a huge incentive for companies to make EVs. And if this is the best price with all the subsidies EVs get, what will happen when they eventually expire? Because they have to. This is a bigger issue that affects almost every company, especially North American companies. There is a new EV tax credit that requires each company to make the batteries inside North America or in an ally country, which is just adding fuel to the already uncontrollable fire. This is why he's concerned about how these policies are being used, and this is why he says EVs are not the solution for the industry, because they're not chosen by the industry. They came into existence mostly because of politics. And he hasn't stopped just by revealing all the problems. He's proposed another solution similar to the earlier one, replacing old cars that have been around for 15 years. This, according to him, will be a better alternative and reduce emissions by 50%. But this is not new. Ever since the world started praising EVs, just like everything else, there has been a huge and constant resistance. This is just another chapter of the story, but it goes to show how fragile the industry is and how all of this will fall upon us, the people. And we're not saying this out of nowhere. Remember, we said there is one more reason why Tavares has been concerned a lot, and that is what happened to one of the biggest companies under Stellantis, Jeep. So let's dive into the details. What does all of it mean to you and us? When you go down the rabbit hole, you realize how drastically this electrification agenda has backfired on Jeep. We all know this brand as the king of off-road, but recently the company has taken the electrification trend a bit too far, a bit too fast, because the sales have gone down drastically, and this is because of all the recent safety issues and fire risks. But beyond that, they tried to make the Jeep a luxury, and they allowed the dealership to do whatever they wanted with the price. But most of their fanbase were middle-class customers, and they simply couldn't afford to buy a car like that. In just 7 years, the price has gone up by almost $20,000, which is just absurd. You can buy a new car for the same amount of money. And we don't have to tell you how this backfired on them, and they're not the only company. Ford did the same thing with the F-150 Lightning. This can serve as a case study for all other companies that are following the trends blindly. It's actually common sense that if you charge people more without providing any additional value, you can say goodbye to your sales. And this is a very common trend in the EV market. They charge you whatever they want for a useless feature, and nobody does anything about it. This is why Tavares is actually sounding the alarm bell. They tried it and failed, and they don't want to do it again. But what else can you do when everyone around you does the same thing? So before we finish, we want to talk about one more thing. What will the future hold for us? If we were saying nobody else except him is concerned with this, we would be lying. There are many people in power who are actually rethinking the hype around electrification, mainly the Japanese giant Toyota, and even some countries in Europe like Germany, who downvoted the policy that tried to ban all combustion engines because there's still a future for them. Combustion engines are bad for the environment because they burn oil and emit gas, but if instead of oil they burned something else like hydrogen or ammonia, there would be no emissions, and believe it or not, we can do that now.